We have a new country in the world. Well, not a new country, but a new name for a country. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The Taliban have renamed the country. Now, Islamic is somewhat predictable. It's the word emirate that is a telling term, because if you think back to history, you had these Islamic empires, all of which aspired to be the Islamic empire stretching to the four corners of the world. You had the Ottomans in Turkey, you had the Mamluks in Egypt, you had the Safavid dynasty in Persia, now Iran, and you had 5 or 6 of these Islamic empires, and they were called caliphates or emirates. And what we have here is the Taliban essentially declaring, we are now an Islamic state. We're part of the effort to spread Islam and Islamic control throughout the world. As we all know, there's a huge stash of weapons that the United States left behind in Afghanistan. Why we did that makes absolutely no sense. Why would you leave behind? I'm not just talking about goggles and powerful rifles, and I'm talking about why would you leave behind Humvees and trucks and highly technological devices and helicopters, all of which now not only falls into the hands of the Taliban, but I'm reading here in Axios, U.S. officials are concerned that in addition to the Taliban using these weapons against civilians or for terrorism, the equipment could be seized by ISIS or end up in the hands of Russia or China. Now, all of this has been done by one Joe Biden and the kind of little coterie of Obamaites around him. And Biden clearly is clueless or seems clueless. It's hard to believe the people around him are so clueless. I don't think they are. But Biden himself doesn't even seem to have a grasp of what's going on. Here's a little clip of Biden responding to Stephanopoulos, asking him about all the chaos. Listen.
We've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
Wow. That was 4 or 5 days ago. Why are you bringing it up now? I mean, this reminds me of the Babylon Bee. Serial killer mounts new defense. Yes, I killed all those people, but that was 4 or 5 days ago. I'm really surprised I'm up here on trial for it. Now, if you watch Biden of late, he's withdrawn, he's disconnected, he hasn't been talking to NATO allies, he didn't notify them in advance, he hasn't been talking to world leaders since. He's kind of in hiding. Kamala Harris, of course, is completely absentee, so we've got absent-minded and absent running the country. Wow. And if you think about Biden, here he is, he's feeble, he's isolated, he's indecisive, he's incoherent. And this is the face that America is now putting forward to the world. We are sort of Biden writ large. And of course, Biden's actions in Afghanistan don't just make him look bad, but make his country look bad. Here's Biden. I'm now reading from the transcript with Stephanopoulos. Do you believe the Taliban have changed? Here's Biden. I think they're going through sort of an existential crisis about do they want to be recognized by the international community as being a legitimate government? Wait, what? The Taliban, the victorious, the guys who just marched into Kabul, if they're having any kind of crisis, it's the crisis of disbelief that a bunch of third world tribesmen were able to defeat the strongest army in the world. They're probably like, wow, we didn't think we were so great. We're obviously much greater than we thought. That's their crisis. The real existential crisis, of course, is not over there, but over here. First of all, it begins with the pathetic communiques that are coming out. And I want to show it's not just Biden. Here's Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State. Together with our international partners, we call on those in positions of power and authority across Afghanistan to guarantee the protection of women and girls. We call on them. We're not going to do anything about it. We're going to call on them. Maybe they'll take our call. It continues, we will monitor closely. I love that phrase, monitor closely, how any future government ensures their rights and freedoms. Now think about that phrase. What do they mean by we will monitor closely? Here's what they mean. We will assign 300 people in the State Department to read newspapers and articles and write up internal memos. So essentially you have people sending memos to each other. Women's rights have taken a dark turn. This is very troubling. We need to issue a statement. Maybe someone could put out a strongly worded op-ed. So it's not a measure of force or strength or even conviction. It's ultimately a confession of weakness. Now, I'm thinking back to the days of the Soviet Union, where the Soviet Union, think about it, it internally collapsed. Why? Because of an existential crisis. An existential crisis because the Politburo, having held power for 70 years, and actually having supervised the development of a massive military and nuclear arsenal, suddenly looked around and said, none of this is working. All our institutions are rotted. All of them are corrupt. We don't even believe in them anymore. It's time to get out of here. And if you think about it, something like that is happening in America now. Our institutions are rotted. They aren't working the way they're supposed to. I'm not saying that the US system is by itself at fault. I'm saying the people running those institutions have corrupted them, have disfigured them, have distorted. Think about the FBI. Think about the way in which even our military has been twisted from its purposes. So, you know, we keep hearing about white privilege everywhere we turn. What I'm worried about is not the end of white privilege, but the end of, I could call it American privilege. American privilege has meant something since World War II. The American passport is better than everybody else's passport. You have a preferential status by being an American. That's why everybody wants, so many people around the world want to be Americans and become Americans. But we might be seeing here, and Afghanistan is the first sign of it, the beginning of the end of American privilege. And believe me, Americans aren't going to like it. Even these wokesters aren't going to like it because their woke nonsense isn't going to matter anymore. People will look at it and laugh around the world, almost the way we would laugh if, let's say, New Zealand issued a communique and told us, oh, we need to change our society. We need to start using new pronouns. Really, New Zealanders? I once told Debbie's like, you know, you should make a movie called New Zealand, Imagine a World Without Her. And I said, well, Debbie, I don't need to make that movie. That's the world we live in now. Now, the Roman Emperor Augustus, when he left power, he said, behold, I have found a Rome of clay, and I leave her to you of marble. I think with Biden, his legacy might be, I found an America that was still intact, that was still strong, that was holding its position in the world. And I pretty much destroyed it all by myself.